Good evening, everyone. We welcome you. Thank you for joining us. Good evening. We are going to start the Bhagavad Gita today, chapter 1. And we already did an introduction about a few weeks ago.
No estoy bien nada.
It's very nice to start the Bhagavad Gita chapter 1 today. Good to be back after a few weeks. And if it would be nice if you all can mute yourselves. And thank you so much for joining. So let's start with the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1. The chapter of this first chapter is entitled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. And I'm going to recite the Sanskrit verse and then
En los sábados reales y el estreno de
Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakchetri Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamakaha Pandavascheva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. So this is in Sanskrit, and Srila Prabhupada has given us the translation, word for word meaning and translation. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So those of you who are listening to the Bhagavad Gita for the first time might wonder what this book is all about. This book is going to teach us about ourselves, the science of self-realization. Now, this very first verse you can see is talking about war, So one may say, why are we talking about battles or wars? But it's important to understand that we ourselves go through a battle on a daily basis. Sometimes it could be our job, sometimes our relationships, sometimes as a parent. So we can see that our hearts are actually like a battleground. And this Bhagavad Gita is going to teach us how to deal with these battles in our lives. So, as we explained in the introduction, those of you who missed out can go on the Facebook page and watch the recording of the introduction. So here in this Bhagavad Gita, so we have two armies on the battlefield, the religious and the irreligious. The religious ones are called the Pandavas, and the irreligious soldiers, they are called the Kauravas. Now, from the side of the Pandavas, the religious pious people, is Arjuna, one of the five brothers, and he has a question for the Supreme Lord Krishna. He's saying, how can I fight my loved ones? On the opposite side, my enemies are my loved ones, right? So Arjuna will be taught by Krishna through this Bhagavad Gita how to live in a conscious way. Right now, Arjuna seems to be in ignorance and he doesn't understand what is right, what is wrong. But the Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to become spiritually conscious. We may be conscious of our bodies, right? On a daily basis, we know what's happening in the body. Most of the time, we do what's happening with our relationships. So, all that consciousness is good. But because we want to live in a real conscious way, it has to be spiritual. We have to be spiritually conscious, right? Lead our lives in a conscious way rather than just randomly. So, this is what this Bhagavad Gita is teaching us, how to live in a conscious way. Now, this Bhagavad Gita provides us with knowledge on how we should lead this human form of life, right? It's different from animal life. Animals are different from human beings. So, this human life comes with philosophical intelligence. And what is the purpose of this intelligence? Is so that we can inquire. In the Vedas, it is said, Athatu Brahma Jigyasa. One must inquire. Inquiring is important. One must inquire, what is the purpose of this human life? What is the goal of this human life? And Bhagavad Gita gives us that knowledge to help us to become free from this material consciousness and come to the level of spiritual consciousness. The Bhagavad Gita will help us to become free from anxieties, from depression, from sadness, from the war which is within us in our heart, right? We are struggling, we are in anxiety because of different relationships or jobs or whatever it may be, right? So, Bhagavad Gita will help us step by step from chapter 1 through chapter 18 through 700 verses, Sanskrit verses with translation, which is going to teach us how to live in a conscious way. Now, the question may arise, what is so special about the Bhagavad Gita? The special thing about it is that the Bhagavad Gita will help us to not remain entrapped in the body, right? Right now, most people are on the bodily concept of life. People are just thinking about how to make this body happy, comfortable, enjoyable. Everything is about the body. But the Bhagavad Gita will teach us how to become free from this bodily concept and regain our original spiritual life. We are spiritual beings right now experiencing humanity, or you may say we are spiritual beings in a human body, right? We are not human bodies that are going to try for spirituality. No, we are spiritual by nature, but Bhagavad Gita will help us how to transform our lives in such a way that we can, live in this world, in this material world, at the same time have a spiritual consciousness. And the condition is that we should hear it with faith, right? Faith is important because take for instance anything, right? We want to learn something, say I want to learn music or dancing or whatever it may be, so I need to approach a teacher. Now when I approach a teacher, I need to have faith in that teacher, that okay, this teacher is bona fide, is experienced, is certified, and is going to teach me what I want to learn. But if I don't have that basic faith, then I will not be able to start my journey in learning whatever I want to learn. So let's go to chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 1 is, as I mentioned, is entitled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield. So here these two armies have gathered there, but where they have gathered in a place of pilgrimage. It's a holy place, and the name of that holy place is Kurukshetra. In fact, I have visited this place a couple of years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, and I went to that same spot where this chariot of Arjuna was parked, and Krishna on the chariot with Arjuna spoke this Bhagavad Gita to, re-spoke this Bhagavad Gita to him over 5,000 years ago. So here there is this battlefield scene, religious and irreligious people, and the climax is fast approaching. So the question is, who is going to win? Those who are religious, the Pandavas, or those who are irreligious, the Kauravas? Is it possible that the good will triumph over evil? So battle is about to begin. So the first 27 verses of this chapter 1 is talking about the whole scene of the battle. Who is placed where, who is doing what. It's just explaining the whole situation on the battlefield. But verse number 27 is where Arjuna is going to start speaking. Of course, he starts speaking before itself to Krishna, but here, the first verse that I read, Dharm Kshetre, Kurukshetre, Samaveta Yuyotsava, we can see that this verse is being spoken by a king, and his name is Dhritarashtra. Unfortunately, he's a blind king, right? Materially, he has no vision. So he has his secretary, who is named Sanjaya, sitting next to him, who has a divine vision, who can, even though is sitting in the palace, is able to see what's happening on the battlefield in Kurukshetra. That was a divine vision given to him by his spiritual teacher. So this very first verse spoken by the blind king gives us an indication about how his mind is working, right? It's the mind of the blind king Dhritarashtra is disclosed here. Now, this king was not only materially blind, but he was also spiritually blind. He was very irreligious, he was greedy, envious, and all these qualities were in his 100 sons that he had. They all were irreligious, greedy, envious people. And all of them, they are called Kauravas, and they were on the side of irreligious people. Now, this blind king, Dhritarashtra, he knew that the pious Pandavas, the five brothers, the Pandavas, they were very religious people. And also, Krishna, the Supreme Lord, was on their side. So this king was afraid that, oh, first of all, it's a holy place where this war is taking place. Secondly, the pious people are there. And thirdly, the Supreme Lord is with the pious people. And even though his sons were at a loss in the sense they didn't have the support of the Lord, he still wanted the pious people dead. This blind king wanted these Pandavas, the five brothers, dead. Why? Because he was overcome with greed. He wanted his son, eldest son Duryodhana, to become the king and rule and be opulent, etc. So that greed was there. Talking about greed, I remember hearing one story, and this is about, some children, they were in the classroom, and the teacher had asked them to, write an essay on some topic. And then it was time for the teacher to ask questions. So the teacher, pointed at one boy and he said, "Here, you, please stand up." And he stood up and he said, "I want to know, what is your goal in life?" That is what he wanted to know, the teacher. So this boy stood up very confident. And what did he say? He said, "Teacher, my goal is very clear." Now, remember, this is only a 10-year-old boy. And he says, "My goal is very, very clear. When I grow up, I would, I'm going to try to get 623 cars, 55 houses, 5 airplanes. This is my goal in life." Now, this seems to be very illogical, unreachable goal. How is it possible to get all this? So the teacher was disappointed. She thought, he will come up with some philosophy, at least understand something, but this was too much. She said, "Okay, you sit down." And as there was a girl sitting next to that boy and said, "Now you stand up. What is your goal in life?" She said, "My goal is very simple. When I grow up, I want to be this boy's wife." Greed. He is aiming for so much opulence, and she wants a shortcut to just be the wife of this boy. So, this is greed. And Dhritarashtra, the blind king, he was very, very greedy. And because of that greed, he had done many impious activities, many irreligious activities. Now, his secretary, who's sitting over there, Sanjaya, his name is Sanjaya, he informed him, about what's going on in the battlefield. And he said that the commander of both the armies, they both were very proud of their army. Each one was praising their army. "Look, I have so and so in on my side, and so is so strong and so powerful," etc., etc. Now, this blind king's oldest son, whose name was Duryodhana, was a great politician. He had always lived an irreligious life, right? He was same like his father, lusty, greedy, proud, envious, and also in illusion. That is a terrible thing to have, to be in illusion. But on the other side, the religious five brothers, the Pandavas, they were very compassionate, and they had great faith in Krishna. They believed in Krishna, and that is why they chose Krishna to be on their side. So before the war commenced, Arjuna, the one of the brothers of the Pandavas, on whose chariot Krishna was and was, driving that chariot, Arjuna requested Krishna, and he said, "Can you please take my chariot in between both the armies?" Right? I want to be there, and I want to see who all have come to fight against me. I want to examine my enemies. I want to see who is on the other side. And sure enough, Krishna took the chariot in between both the armies. And what did Arjuna saw? He saw his teachers, his grandfather, his uncles, and cousins, and friends, and well wishers, all on the opposite side, waiting to fight with him. Now, verse number 27 explains in this chapter that when Arjuna saw all this, he became overwhelmed with compassion. He was like full of compassion, and he did not know what to do. He was thinking, how can I kill my loved ones? I love them all. Yes, they are irreligious. Yes, they have done me wrong. Yes, they don't, they need to be punished because they are like aggressors. So, I mean, but still, how can I kill them? They are my loved ones. So when he saw that scene of his loved ones on the opposite side, whom he had to kill, the limbs of his body were quivering, his mouth was drying up. And all these symptoms actually are not that Arjuna was afraid, but these are the signs of soft heartedness. Right? Soft heartedness. Arjuna, he had these symptoms, but because he was very compassionate and loving. It was not because he was weak. No, this soft heartedness was because of compassion. And Krishna will explain later on in other chapters that this compassion is actually a characteristic of someone who is in pure love with the Supreme Lord. So here Arjuna is saying that my whole body is trembling. He was holding a bow in his hand, and he said, "The bow which is in my hand is slipping away. My skin is burning. I'm unable to stand, and I'm forgetting myself." This is how Arjuna was feeling, because he was seeing his loved ones on the opposite side, whom he had to fight and kill. Now, mind you, Arjuna was a soldier, he was a kshatriya, he was a warrior, and it was his duty to fight whenever there was a war that was declared. Then as a warrior, he had to fight, he could not back out. So here he started giving reasons to Krishna why he should not fight this battle. Right? When we have a battle within ourselves, right, in our heart, we have the battle, we are struggling with our relationships or whatever situation, maybe our boss, our job, our friends, it could be anybody. So when we have that war going on within the heart, then how do we feel? Sometimes we want to back off. Sometimes we feel, oh no, I love this friend, or I love my spouse, or I love my parents, or whoever it may be. I love them. How can I fight with them? Right? Those feelings come up. And sometimes it's because of compassion. So here, then we start reasoning, right? We start reasoning, whatever I'm doing, is it right or is it wrong? So here Arjuna also, he started thinking about it, and he started reasoning with Krishna. He first thing he said is, I don't see how any good can come by my killing. How is it going to be beneficial if I'm going to kill my loved ones, right? I don't want victory at the cost of the lives of my loved ones. No. He started giving so many reasons that I must be compassionate. If my loved ones are killed, with whom am I going to enjoy this kingdom that I will win, right? And when so many soldiers will die in the battle, when this battle starts, there were millions and millions of soldiers gathered there at that time. This is about 5,000 years ago. So he is reasoning and he's saying that if these soldiers will be killed, then their wives will become widows, the children will be without father, and there's going to be destruction of dynasty. And then also, it is sinful to kill. So, how can I do something that is so sinful? And he says, I am not prepared to fight. What pleasure will I give by fighting with my loved ones? Don't we have these kind of thoughts in our minds sometimes when we have maybe when we have some arguments, or we have some whatever situation, maybe we are confused. What should I do? I love this person, and how can I say something to this person? So here Arjuna is saying, I am not prepared to fight because I am not going to get any pleasure out of this fighting. And he says, the sin will overcome me if I'm going to kill such aggressors. Now, Arjuna understands that the opposite party, they are all irreligious people, and they were aggressors and they need to be punished. Now, in the Vedas, in the Vedic scriptures, there is a description of 6 kinds of aggressors who need to be punished. Who are those? Someone who gives poison, someone who's an arsonist, someone who attacks with deadly weapons, someone who's a thief, someone who usurps the land of others, and someone who entices the wife of another person. These are 6 kinds of aggressors, and they should be punished. And guess what? These 5 pious Pandava brothers, they had suffered all the above atrocities that I just mentioned. These opposite side irreligious Kauravas, they have they had done all these 6 kinds of aggressions, and they needed to be punished. And still, even though the irreligious people had tried to poison one of the brothers, they took away their property, their land, they stole from them, they did everything possible, and still Arjuna does not want to kill these aggressors. And he mentions a very important point in this chapter. Arjuna is telling Krishna that I have heard from disciplic succession. Now he's whatever arguments he's putting forth, he is saying that this is something I have heard from a bona fide disciplic succession, which means I'm not talking whimsically. Nope. That's not what I am saying. I am talking about something that I've heard in the disciplic succession. This is a very important point. Just as when we are sick and we go to see a doctor, we make sure we go to a bona fide doctor, right? Someone who is certified, someone who is experienced, right? So, similarly, when it comes to spiritual education, spiritual knowledge, we must also make sure that we are hearing from a bona fide authority. Now, I don't know how many of you have this Bhagavad Gita, but this Bhagavad Gita actually it gives us towards the end of the introduction, it gives us a list of disciplic succession. It tells us very clearly that this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna himself, and the Vedic scriptures clearly explain that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He spoke it to Brahma, Brahma spoke it to Narada, Narada spoke it to Vyasadeva. So this is how the chain of this scientific spiritual knowledge coming down from the perfect source, Krishna, and it comes down to number 32, which is Srila Prabhupada. And you can see a picture of Srila Prabhupada over here. He is the one who gave us translations of Bhagavad Gita as it is without any change. So it's important to hear, especially the spiritual knowledge, from a disciplic succession. In chapter 4, we will come across the history of the Bhagavad Gita, which is Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajarshiyo Vidu. So from there, we will learn that this knowledge should be heard in a strict disciplic succession. Perfect knowledge comes only from perfect source. So we can see that here Arjuna, he is not giving his own opinion, but he is talking about a disciplic succession. He's saying, it is, I have heard that it is better that the opposite party, they come and they kill me. I'll drop my weapons. I will be unarmed. Let them come and kill me. This is what Arjuna is saying. And he's saying that, okay, I don't mind. Let my kingdom be gone. Let these irreligious Kauravas take my kingdom. No problem. I'll live by begging, but I would not want to kill my loved ones. And saying that, Arjuna, he put aside his bow and he sat down. He sat down lamenting. He sat down with his mind overwhelmed with grief. He was very sad. We can just imagine, what, how disturbed Arjuna was. This is actually a sign of misused compassion. Compassion is good, it is very good. It's one of the qualities that each one of us should have, quality of compassion. But here, Arjuna's compassion was misused. He did not understand what is real compassion. Now, in chapter 2, we will understand what is real compassion. Real compassion is for the soul. This body is just a covering for the soul, right? If we have compassion just for the body, then that compassion is misplaced. Now, when we go to chapter 2, we will see the importance of the spirit soul, the difference between the body and the soul, the difference between the garment and the body. So, for instance, if I am drowning in the ocean and someone just comes back with the covering of my body and says, I have saved, that is not the right way of saving. Similarly, just saving the body is not sufficient. We need to save the soul which is within the body. So the compassion should also be applied to the soul. And that we can understand from the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, we have to take care of the body, we have to protect the body, we have to nourish the body. But at the same time, we should not forget the soul. The soul also needs to be fed, right? If we forget compassion for the soul, then we cannot live in a conscious way. What is conscious living? Conscious living is to be aware, to be aware of not only of the body, which we already are, but also of the soul. We have to be aware. And how can we be aware? There's a process. We need to understand where and how should we use our compassion, right? Bhagavad Gita answers all those questions, all these questions that are in our mind. And here we can see Arjuna, he's very confused. He doesn't know where to engage his compassion. He doesn't know what to do. He is lamenting. He is overcome by grief, and he is kind of lost. Don't we go through that phase of life sometimes? Don't we go through some situations where we are completely lost, where we don't know which way to go, what to do, what is right, what is wrong? And sometimes we do know what is right, and still we go ahead and do the wrong thing. Bhagavad Gita will teach us all through chapter 2 through 18 how to live in a conscious way. When we start living our human life in a conscious way, very, very important. In other words, when we follow the owner's manual for a human life, This is a manual for a human body, how to use this human form of life. So when we start following the Bhagavad Gita, then we will understand the real purpose of human life. Just as, let's say, when we are driving, right? When we are driving, we are conscious. It's not that we are lost in our thoughts and we are just, thinking about something or, planning. No, we are conscious. At the time of driving, we are conscious of the cars around us. We are conscious of the traffic lights. We are conscious about the highway, the roads, everything we are conscious of. We are driving in a conscious way. Similarly, we have to lead this human form of life in a conscious way. We have to be conscious of our senses. We need to be conscious of our mind, right? And most importantly, be conscious of our activities. What kind of activities are we performing? Now, when we go to chapter 3 and 5 of the Bhagavad Gita, we will see what is the best way to perform activities in such a way that we do not accumulate more and more karma. This is what we are going to learn from chapter 3 and chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita. So, Bhagavad Gita basically teaches us how to use our senses and our mind in a proper way, in a conscious way. How not to get entangled that we fall off the wagon, right? And all this is possible through knowledge. In fact, in any sphere of life, we need knowledge. If I want to start business, I need knowledge. I need to have knowledge about what kind of business I can do. And when I choose what kind of business, then I have to have knowledge how to do that business. What all does it require? What are the things that I need to do and what are the things I don't need to do to be successful in business, right? So similarly, if we want to live in a conscious way, then we need to understand the difference between this body and the soul. Then we will be able to live in a conscious way. Like I gave the example of driving. When we are driving, we are conscious of our surroundings. It's not that we are just looking straight and we are not looking at the traffic lights or we are not looking at the cars who are trying to come into our lane. No, we're conscious of everything around us. Similarly, in our day to day life, we need to be conscious of everything that's going on around us. And this is possible when we get the knowledge. It's a simple process, right? It's very simple. It's just learning how to be pious, how to be religious, how to be compassionate, not just for the body, but also be compassionate for the soul. That is the real us, right? Say, for instance, there's a hungry person. We see someone who's very hungry, and out of compassion, we give food to that person, and so that the hunger is satisfied, right? But then this person is going to be hungry again tomorrow. Can we feed all the people every day? Not practical at all. It's not possible. But when we see a hungry person, we definitely offer food, but at the same time, we also give this book, the Bhagavad Gita. We also give the knowledge so that that hungry person can understand why is he hungry, why is he homeless, why is he suffering, right? We all are suffering in this material world: birth, disease, old age, death, sufferings, miseries caused by our mind and body, miseries caused by other living entities, miseries caused by material nature. So many miseries are going on. For instance, we are facing this misery of coronavirus for almost 2 years now, right? But if we understand from this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, we understand that this human life is a life of responsibility. Along with this human life comes intelligence, which the animals do not have, which the birds and the insects and the reptiles, they do not have. We human beings, we have what we call is philosophical intelligence, so that we can understand what is right, what is wrong. But to do that, we need training, and we need guidance. When we get the training and guidance from the Bhagavad Gita, then gradually we will understand what is real compassion, not the compassion that Arjuna was talking about, right? Actually, the Bhagavad Gita really begins from second chapter, second verse. Right now, in this first chapter, we are just observing the army on the battlefield, right? What's going on? The prelude to the war is what we are hearing in chapter one. In chapter one, we are hearing about Arjuna's confusion, Arjuna's lamentation, Arjuna's compassion, which is misplaced. He's not putting the right compassion in the right way. So we see all these things in chapter one. But chapter 2, starting with verse 2, we will see Krishna, the Supreme Lord, will start speaking. He will enlighten Arjuna and he will give him the foundation of spiritual life on which we can build our spiritual life. Just like a home needs a very strong foundation, similarly, to understand, to become self realized, we need a very strong foundation. And that is what we will learn in chapter 2, which actually is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. In other words, chapter 2 will give us a summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. And then chapter 3 onwards, we will hear the 5 different subject matters of the Bhagavad Gita: the spirit soul, the supreme Lord, karma, eternal time, and material nature. These are the 5 subject matters which will be discussed all through chapter 18. So we have got this rare human form of life, and we have got philosophical intelligence along with it. And so it behooves us to think logically, right? To think on the spirit soul level. And spirituality is an intrinsic part of our life. It's not, by the way, it's not some people who want to be spiritual, some who don't know. We are spiritual beings, we are spirit souls, part of the Supreme Lord. And we are just right now in a human body. So when every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, when you come and join and you hear Bhagavad Gita chapter wise, chapter by chapter, then we will be able to really put all pieces together and understand, aha, this is what human life is meant for. This is what I'm supposed to do. And this is what I'm not supposed to do. We will understand. And along with hearing the Bhagavad Gita, it is important to do some meditation also. Meditation can help us to calm our senses, to calm our mind, to be able to grasp this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, right? When we do that meditation, and especially in this age, which is called Kali Yuga, the best form of meditation is mantra meditation. When we meditate on the sound vibrations on a daily basis, this will help us, this meditation will help us to focus our minds on this knowledge. And it is going to help us to live our human life in a very conscious way and not randomly, right? This human form of life is not to just waste it in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. No, even the animals do that. Then what is the difference between them and us? We are above the animal life because we have intelligence. So we should recognize this precious gift of human form that we've got and have that attitude of gratitude. Be thankful to be in a human form, because this Bhagavad Gita is specially meant for human beings. It's a manual, owner's manual, just like when we buy gadgets or when we buy a car, along with that comes an owner's manual. So similarly, the Lord has given us an owner's manual, which is the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And what will be the result of understanding Bhagavad Gita? We will be able to lead a healthy life, healthy body, stress-free mind, sharp intelligence, and happy souls. So this is what will be the result of understanding and putting Bhagavad Gita into practice. So this is how we will be able to realize ourselves and use the compassion in the right place, in the right way, at the right moment. This is what we learn from chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, how Arjuna is so confused, and we will see he is going to approach Krishna to be his teacher. He will become a disciple of this great teacher, the greatest teacher, which is Lord Krishna, and learn from him the purpose of human form of life. So Bhagavad Gita is a systematic study. So I would recommend that you join every Tuesday and you hear, and then hear with an open mind, and then you decide, is it something that is what I would like to pursue? Is it something that's sounding logical? Is it something that is going to make me more happy? Is it so? Once you hear it with an open mind, then you decide whether you would like to put it into practice or not. For instance, I just now talked about mantra meditation, right? We can I can demonstrate to you that mantra meditation now for a few minutes, so you can get an idea how to meditate on a daily basis. When we do that, what is mantra? Man means mind and tra means to free the mind from all anxiety and stress. So that is mantra. So when we do that meditation with the sound vibrations, those sound vibrations are so powerful, they enter into our ears and go straight to the heart, and they start cleansing the heart to make the heart very pure. So this is how we will be able to then realize ourselves. That is why Bhagavad Gita is called science of self realization. So I'm going to demonstrate to you this mantra meditation, and if you like, you can join me, and I'm going to put the mantra in the chat. I have just put it in the chat, so you can look at it and chant with me. Okay, we'll just do it for a few minutes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is the mantra meditation. So I would recommend that you please try it on a daily basis.